my mother was like, well, you're not as pretty as I was. You weren't as thin as I was. You didn't have as many boys chasing you as I was. And my grandmother was like, well, you haven't practiced enough, or you need to sing this aria or that aria. I started with a college professor, voice teacher, when
Mm.
I was 12.
Wow. Quick one before we get on with the episode. We all know that likes and subscribers help every channel on YouTube. So if you could please like and subscribe to this channel, I would really, really, really appreciate it. It would, of course, help this channel to keep going, and it will help me get more and more guests on board so I can keep having these amazing conversations and keep sharing them with you. If you'd like to support the channel, there's a Patreon link and a PayPal link in the description below. So please click on those. Every cent helps me to continue being able to focus on doing this. And if you would like mentoring from me, if you would like help coming into a space of awareness, if you would like support, and you would like just some encouragement, or you just want to have a conversation with me, go to lovecreatesfreedom.com. It will redirect to a Facebook group where I am doing free mentoring. And I'm doing free mentoring because I can. I have this channel. I'm building this channel. I've got big plans for this channel, so I can do the free mentoring for people. So if you could like and subscribe, it will also help me continue doing the free mentoring. And if you do want to donate because you are loving this and you understand this entire world functions around money, I would really, really appreciate it. Anyway, let's get on with the show, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Mwah. On your profile, you've got a comment about slowing down in life when it is so crazy right now. And so what I wanted to ask you, because when I had a look and I thought, I wonder what slowing down means to you, because it means different things to different people. So that's what I wanted to ask you was, from that comment, why did you put that on your profile, and what does it mean? What does slowing down mean for you?
Um, I mean, it's definitely on there, not because I have already, so as I think I told you, like I've recently, like as of November of last year, started a coaching, like starting into a business, being a coach. I've always like been a coach. I've always been one of those people that people come to when they have questions and need guidance and everything. Um, and at first I had this like very much this imposter syndrome mentality of who am I to tell other people how to improve their lives when I'm still working on myself. And I had somebody explain it to me that the people you want coaching you are the people who are in the valley with you, but a few yards ahead,
Mm-hmm.
not the people standing up on the hill looking down and having never been in the valley. And so the slowing down comment, I actually read it. It was a paraphrase of something I read. I want to say that came from the book Stolen Focus, which I read about half of recently until it got too depressing, and I decided I needed to set it down for a little bit and read something else and then come back to it. Because the book itself is about how basically big tech has exploited our attention to make money, and have not really considered the ethics of exploiting billions of people's attention to make money.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but how this idea that in today's world, slowing down is radical, like it's a radical concept. And it's definitely something aspirational for me because I'm not great at slowing down. my my husband is always like, you can't ever sit still, like you will never retire, you will never not work. And of course I'm like, yeah, it's like, sure, why would I retire? There's too many things to learn, too many things to do. But I've tried to, particularly recently, really be intentional about slowing down, because I was finding myself, and I think this is so true when you're an entrepreneur anyway, or a business owner anyway. It's really hard to stop being a business owner, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
stop worrying about your business, or stop hustling or stop. And I don't know what Australia is like, but certainly in the US, the whole hustle mentality that you're always supposed to be like working and moving and doing something, it's just very pervasive. And I was finding more and more that I was not feeling as connected to my family as I should, not even feeling connected to myself. Like I was being busy as a means of avoiding because I'm very sort of clear and upfront with people that I grew up in a very abusive family, specifically emotionally abusive and manipulative. And I was never good enough. I mean, I was a straight A student. I sang in this big national award winning show choir. I did, but it was never good enough, like ever good enough. Parents, grandmother in particular, who was very manipulative, never once told me they were proud of me. Now they would tell everybody else about how their daughter or their granddaughter was doing all this amazing stuff. You know, my granddaughter, blah, 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 right? But not actually tell me like, oh, well, you didn't, you need to work on this song. Yeah, you're pitchy on the high note or whatever. Like there was always my mother was like, well, you're not as pretty as I was. You weren't as thin as I was. You didn't have as many boys chasing you as I was. And my grandmother was like, well, you haven't practiced enough, or you need to sing this aria or that aria. I started with a college professor, voice teacher, when I was 12.
Wow.
And now, as a voice teacher and a piano teacher, and I'm looking at my group class of 11 to 13-year-olds. It's a group class. It's very fun. It's very joyful. It's all, I do have one boy. It's almost all girls. I do have one boy. And I'm like, it was like, I don't think it really realized until I was the voice teacher of kids that age how really inappropriate it was to have a 12-year-old start with a college professor, right? And so recently I've been trying to slow down to be more intentional with my time with my husband. Like I try to, like, normally I was like, today I was like, oh, I shouldn't have made that appointment with Kaylee at 7:30 because I've been trying very hard to not do work after 7, right? And he's very supportive. He was like, no, no, no. He's like, this is like going to be really cool. It's going to be, a good thing for you. He's like, and I don't know if you know the Mel Robbins 5-second rule.
Yes.
5, yeah. And he was like, you always say 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, just do it. And I'm like, using my words against me.
Yeah. So do you use that because of your imposter syndrome, do you think? Because it helps. Like, I imagine the imposter syndrome gets in and it's that voice, and share with me what it does for you. But for me, it's that voice that's just constantly saying, you don't have to do it now. Don't worry about doing it now. They probably don't even want to hear from you. They probably don't. Like, they really don't want to have anything to do with you. Nobody cares what you have to say, and nobody cares what you have to say. So for me, that's kind of where that imposter syndrome voice, I don't use the Mel Robbins technique. I know about it, but for me, I'm still in that phase of, yeah, is the voice right? Like, is it? Could it be right? Maybe it's right. No, it's not right. Like, I'm still in that negotiating phase with that voice in my head. So I want to find out, is that what you're using the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 is to actually get yourself to take action when that imposter syndrome and that voice is kind of going, no.
I have, and it's kind of funny to say this because most people are like, oh my gosh, you do so much. How can you accuse yourself of being a procrastinator? I am a procrastinator. and I think a lot of the times the procrastination comes from that imposter syndrome. Like, who am I to say I can do this? Who am I to give someone else advice? And I didn't ever really understood fully, like, the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, how it helped me move until actually recently. And I don't know if it was on YouTube or a podcast, but I heard Mel Robbins like really describe it, about why it works. It's like when she first sort of had that aha moment about like how she discovered it. Um, And it's making yourself act before that little like primitive part of your brain feels uncomfortable and tries to protect you.
Yeah.
And I know there's a fair amount of, and there has been up to this point in time in my life, a fair amount of not really giving something as much of my all as I should have, or I could have, because of this fear that if I did, it wouldn't be good enough. And so it's better to just procrastinate it off and then have that as the excuse about why I didn't succeed at something, than actually like put in all of this effort and not succeed anyway. And I know a lot of that goes back to the fact that I was never good enough. Like, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I'm just sitting here listening to you going, wow, we have the same voice in our head. And that's why I wanted to do these conversations, because it's hard when you sit in this isolated little world, which, let's face it, we all kind of sit on our own islands with our own voices in our head going, is this normal? Does anyone else have this voice? Am I going insane? Am I the only one that has this voice in my head that constantly says, kind of like a little bit of a worthless sack of shit? Like nobody wants to hear from you. Nobody wants to see you. Nobody wants to know what you know. Everybody else has their shit together. Everybody else is succeeding. And you on your individual little island are the only one in the world that has this issue that you have. And so I'm really like, I know I've only been talking about this for about 5 minutes, and I'm just sitting here going, wow, this is like family. this is someone who seriously had my parents and my grandparents. My grandma was similar to yours, except whenever I would go and see her thing, because I was raised in office jobs. You had office jobs. It's just what you did. You have a job. You work in the same job for 35, 40 years. You retire, and then you die. Like that's what happens in my family. So nobody in my family are entrepreneurs, or they don't do anything outside of this achievement of having a job, having a house, having a car, having life insurance, medical insurance, car insurance, like the very mainstream life. They're all very like that. And whenever I used to go and see my grandma, the first thing she'd say to me was, how's the job? Are you bored yet? Because every job that I went into, I would always be bored within about 2 to 3 weeks, because it was always underneath me, because I never had that confidence to think that I could be anything other than someone who worked in administration. And so it's that, it's these things, and I'm sure that they don't intentionally, I know they didn't intentionally do it. I'm sure your grandma never intentionally sent you on this pathway to be this way. But
she was borderline psychopathic. I'm not sure.
I take it back. Maybe she did it on purpose.
I mean, I'm not sure that she did it. I mean, at some point, they, like if you're like a narcissistic, manipulative human being, you don't get to like, I don't let her off the hook. And she's passed away now. I still don't let her off the hook. Like the whole like don't speak ill of the dead thing. No, that's BS. I'm gonna speak ill of the dead if the dead was a horrible person when they were alive.
And they're also not here anymore, so it's not like they care.
Yeah. Like if anything, I don't speak at all of the dead, because that's the thing that's like keeping her in my life, is speaking of her.
Yeah. And that and isn't that true?
I mean, I do think there is a fair amount of like, I mean, and we all like in some ways mess up our kids, right? like we don't want to.
You don't have we don't have a choice. Like we came from parents who were and I do sit in a place of compassion for my grandma and also my mum, because they came from a time where my grandpa went off to 2 wars. And so my grandma had no idea if he was coming back. And the second time he left, she was stuck with two little kids. So she's now on her own trying to figure out, is her husband going to come home or not? He came home, but he came home a completely different human being. He came home very aggressive and very violent and became an alcoholic, and he died young of lung cancer. And it just, then I look at, well, the life that my mum went through with having her father disappear and having her mother going through this massive amounts of trauma, through her husband going off to war. And so I sit in this weird place of compassion for what they went through, and a little bit of disillusionment around, well, why couldn't you get your shit together and be a better parent? Like, why couldn't you get your shit together? But then they didn't have the internet like we do now. Look at how much support we have online. We have a problem, we can just go and join a group, and all of a sudden there's 100 people that sympathize with us. There's 100 people that agree with us. There's another 100 people that are willing to support us. Like, it's a completely different time now.
Yeah, and it's like when people are, I mean, my grandmother had mental health issues. I mean, borderline antisocial personality disorder. And then my stepfather was like your grandfather, was a Korean and Vietnam War vet who, had, they didn't diagnose PTSD in those days,
Yeah.
and so he had his own sort of variety of, borderline antisocial personality disorder. And then my mother was, of course, the like I love her. I mean, and I never thought I would have a relationship with her, but weirdly, after my grandmother passed away, even before my grandmother passed away, actually, we're kind of after I became a mother. And I don't know if it was her becoming a grandmother, her seeing me as a mother, I don't know, but mom started standing up for herself against her own mom.
Mm.
But like, she was always the mirror of growing up with this horrible mother. I mean, my grandmother had her when she was really young and then divorced her dad and got married to this much older, really wealthy guy who didn't really like having the daughter, of his, pretty young bride. And they shipped my mom off to boarding schools all the time. And I mean, so my mom, I had a lot of grace for, even in her, because, she was trying to fill, you can't fill from an empty cup.
Yeah.
And her cup was really empty.
Yeah.
And so there was a fair amount of like me parenting her. And I was really lucky. I don't know, lucky is the right word. When you grow up in that sort of, when you grow up in in any sort of abusive home, I think I would like to think that if you grow up in a physically abusive home, that that how your parents treat you is wrong, but I can't speak to that. I do know that I used to wish my parents would hit me, because then somebody would care. Because verbally they were just so awful, both my mom, my stepdad, and then of course my grandmother, who was kind of the ringleader of it all. Um, but when you grow up in that sort of emotionally abusive home, you don't know that it's wrong. Like, you don't know that how you're being treated is not appropriate. And thinking back to the voice teacher that I mentioned earlier, I said I started with her when I was 12. When I was 14, and as an adult now, I think about how insanely brave she was. When I was 14, I went into a voice lesson, and normally my grandmother would go with me. For some reason, she dropped me off that day. She didn't go in with me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I go in, and Miss Rogers is like, we're not going to sing today. I want to talk to you. And I'm like, of course, as a 14-year-old, I'm like, am I in trouble? Like, what did I do? I'm like, here, I could practice more. I swear, I swear I'll practice more. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and she looked at me and she said, do you know that how your mom and your grandmother treat you is not right? And I think now I'm like, oh my gosh, how brave is that? Like, because that could have seriously backfired. Like, as an adult now who has worked with teenagers in various settings, like, that could have seriously backfired if I had been like, what do you mean? And then gone and told my parents, and and of course nowadays you have all the youth protection stuff, and she would, like that, she could have gotten fired, if my parents had raised a fuss. But I was like, what do you mean my parent, what do you mean they don't treat me that way? And she had, like, she was prepared. She had like brochures on what is emotional abuse, and I think, I won't say that finding out at such a young age, like, fix things. Like, it didn't fix things. I'm like, I am still, like, working on, like, how to rewrite the broken core beliefs that come from growing up being told, you're stupid or you're fat. That was always my favorite one. I paid for my undergraduate with the Miss America Scholarship Program. I was not
Wow.
fat.
Yeah.
But my stepfather's nickname for me every time I would, like, eat anything that he deemed not healthy, as he would call me a fat ass.
Wow.
Yeah. Um, but I would say, knowing at an early age, I started to sort of learn things to shield myself. And so and certainly I started at that age going, it stops here. Right. And I have been just all over, like, how to not repeat those things with my kids. And I think I've done a pretty good job. My daughter twice said some, my daughter's 15. When she was maybe 12, 3 or 4 years ago, she, watching all the YouTubers, she's like, mom, she's like, all of these YouTubers that I watch, they go on and on about how their parents aren't supportive of them. And she was like, I just really can't relate, because you and dad supported me being a cat for most of my childhood. For years she lived a whole alternate life in cat world, and she had brothers and sisters, and she would tell us all about it. And I made her cat ears that matched all of her outfits, and so for like several years of family portraits, she has her cat ears on.
Wow.
and,
Wow.
and then a couple of weeks ago she said something about, some of her friends were talking about, like, something that they were keeping a secret from their parents or something. And she was like, I just couldn't relate to that, because I tell you everything. She's like, I can't even think, like, what would I keep secret?
Yeah.
And I'm
Wow.
like, so
So
I'm like, I think I did okay.
that one teacher, this is just my perspective, that one teacher was such a gift. That if I look back at, because my whole family, like yours, were my bullies, my mom, my dad, my grandma, my sibling, even my teachers would bully me. And so I look at that and I think that moment in time was such a gift for you, to have someone at such a young age see what was happening, validate what was happening, and let you know that it wasn't okay. And whether you were able to emotionally do anything about it at the time, just to have that wisdom at such a young age and to be able to use that to create that separation, it's a gift. And I just wanted to let you know that that moment in time was such a gift, because it could have gone completely differently if she hadn't said anything. So how amazing that someone was willing to do that for you.
Yeah, I mean, my sister is 10 years older than I am, and, like, she has struggled, I mean, most of her life. In the last, well, since my grandmother passed away, lots of things have changed. But I mean, she is, well, and the two of, like, my mom in particular was always pushing the two of us away from each other.
Mm.
When our mom died 3 years ago, March 16th, 2020, the day after the US went into lockdown for the pandemic.
Wow.
Our mom passed away of a stroke. And she had a lot of health problems. So my sister and I were both, like, freaked out about how we were going to keep her safe. Fortunately, she was in Florida with my sister and had been for a couple months. And I keep losing this one. I was the executor of my mom's estate. And like I said, my sister's 10 years older than I am. And so we had gotten all done with everything. And our parents had mom in particular, but even my grandmother, they used to just like always try to pit us against each other. I mean, it was like they could see that if the two of us like bonded together, like we wouldn't put up with their crap anymore or something. I don't know. Um, and so after I got done with all of the stuff with the estate and everything, and I was down, I'd gone down. So this was even before we'd gone to visit in Florida. No, it was when we had gone to visit Florida, and I sat to visit her, and I sat her down. And before I even said anything, it was so funny. It was just very serendipitous because I'm like, we're gonna go and we're gonna sit down and I'm gonna talk to her about the fact because I had been talking to my husband. I was like, this is like a pivotal moment right now. I could completely walk away from my sister because we've been pitted against each other our whole lives, like, and just like be done because like she's the last of my family. Like my stepfather's passed away 6 or 7 years ago. My grandmother over a decade ago. My mom was an only child, and as she said, thankfully. Um, um, so our mom had passed away. My sister doesn't have children. I'm like, I could completely walk away just because we've been pitted against each other our whole lives, or I could say, you know, I don't know how cursy you want me to be, so I'm not going to curse. I just like, forget them. I'm going to, we're gonna finally be sisters, and I could go either way. And before I even said anything, Marie was like, she said exactly what I've been thinking. Like she was like, I feel like this is this moment, like we could just feed into what they had always pushed us. They pushed us apart, or we could finally be sisters. And she was like, damn it, I really want a sister. And I'm like, damn it, I really want a sister too. And it's been great now, but I think about all of the pain and everything that she's been through and I think a lot of that is because she didn't have that. She didn't have somebody, and she, like I said, she's 10 years older than I am, who was like, hey, it's not okay. And like I said, I don't know that it made it easier. Law school, I have a law degree. And, I met my husband in law school. The falling in love for somebody who is completely Pandora boxed all of their emotions because of growing up in an emotionally abusive family while you're under stress of law school, not a great combination for your mental health. Because so when you grow up, like, well, you said that it sounds so much similar to your own situation, the emotional abuse. When you get just like pounded emotionally all the time, you just have to like put all of your emotions in a bottle and like just like cap it.
Because mine didn't go into a bottle. Mine went into. Did you ever watch Maxwell Smart, where he used to go through door after door after door after door, and there are like 30 different doors that had all these different connections, and some of them were solid steel and some of them were concrete. Sometimes I look at it and go, you know what? My emotions are beyond. They're probably behind about 1,000 doors, and each door has a different code, and each door I have to kind of go through, and by the time I get to about the 30th one, I give up and I turn around and go back. So my emotions are well and truly just that shit is locked down. It's just so fun.
You have to lock them down because if you speak back, if you show emotions at all whenever you have somebody who's super emotionally manipulative, they just use that against you.
Oh, the punishment that you get for it is horrendous.
Yeah. And so I always found that like in my own like completely anecdotal experience that people who grew up with really emotionally manipulative, that word doesn't always roll off the tongue well, families, they either go, well, if they think I'm so terrible, I'm just going to prove them right and I'm just going to go party. Or the direction I went, I'm going to prove them wrong and be as perfect as possible.
I never thought about that. I never thought about proving them wrong and trying to be perfect.
I mean, I want to tell you,
yeah,
later
you're
on in
right.
life, I was like, later on in life, I was like, dang it, I would have had so much more fun if I'd gone the other way. My sister was kind of the one that was the partier and would go race cars and do all of, and smoke weed and do all of that stuff. Now, to be fair, she was born in 1961. And so her generation was very different than mine, born in 1971. We had the 70s versus the 80s as teenagers were probably the two most different decades ever.
I was born in the 70s, and I went so my sister was born in the 70s, and she went down the perfect. She's won gold medals. She's achieved, like, she's amazing according to everybody. And I went down the party. I did the drugs, the alcohol, the smoking, bad jobs, bad relationships. Like, I went down the path of your sister.
Well, I'm like, even now, like in my state, Missouri, they just legalized recreational marijuana use.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, I could literally go down the street and with cash money at a legitimate like store buy marijuana. And I'm still like, no, no, I would never do that. And my husband's just like,
You're a little bit older now, but maybe as a teenager, had it been legalized and you could just go down to the shops at like 17, 18, 19 and pick some up, you may have. Who knows?
I don't know. I don't even know. We have wandered off course. Where are we, Kaylee?
Okay, let me bring us back.
On the map.
I'll bring us back on the map. So, because I do find this really, really interesting. Because one of the things that you said was you had this moment where you kind of wish that they would hit you, because then, like, people would know too that they were doing something wrong, and you would know. And I really don't want this to take away from people that have been physically abused, because it's a horrible experience. But I remember thinking over the years, going, it must be so much easier in some ways to be physically abused, because then you know you're being abused. Like, you know that somebody is physically doing something to damage you. But emotional abuse, it's like this silent, it's just silent. You don't actually know you're being abused. You don't know. And I've had a number of really emotionally abusive relationships, and I was in one for 5 years. And it wasn't until I walked away, and I walked away completely empty. Like, I had nothing left. I'd lost myself. I'd lost my ability to feel happy. I'd lost my confidence. I'd lost anything that represented positivity inside of me. Was just completely gone. I walked away a shell of a human being with nothing left. And that was all from emotion. And it took 5 years for that to happen. And then I rebounded into another emotionally abusive relationship that I was in for another 5 years. So I had 10 solid years of emotional abuse from partners, as well on top of what my family was still doing to me. And it wasn't until my dad died when I was 30, and I was standing, so I was getting married, and I was standing trying on this wedding dress, marrying a man I knew I didn't want to marry. And I was marrying him because I didn't know how to say, I don't want to marry you, because I didn't want to disappoint everybody that was so excited about the fact that I was getting married. So I went ahead and married this man, and I was standing in my wedding dress, listening to a message on my phone, because I'd had a phone call of the nurse at the home where my dad was, saying, you need to come because your dad's not going to make it. Your dad's going to be gone within the next hour or two. And I remember standing there with holding my phone, looking down at this wedding dress, knowing I was marrying a man I didn't want to marry, going, yeah, that this just rounds up my entire life of just the shit that I've had to endure. And I was 30 and now I'm 47. So it's like 17 years ago. But I'm only now, in the last probably 5 years since my mum died, because my mum died 5 years ago, really kind of delving into this, how much damage did they actually do? How much damage is inside? How much has their behavior impacted me? And then I look at how hard it is, like you with the imposter syndrome, of how hard it is to get out there, how hard it is to make money, how hard it is to create videos online, how hard it is to even have a job now, because there's this voice that's constantly saying there's nothing that you can do in this world that is going to work. And I think about all these other people that have gone through emotional abuse and come out the other side. And for some of us, it's been our entire life. So my emotional abuse started almost on the day I was born, because my mum found out that my dad was having an affair, and so they separated 3 days after I was born. So it's like the emotional abuse started back then. And then you come out the other side and you go, where do I even start? Like, where do I even start to fix the volume of damage that all of these people have consistently done over the last 40 odd years of my life? So what I'd love to ask you is, once you realized you'd gone through massive amounts of emotional abuse, once you realized you had all this trauma inside of you, once you realized you had all of your emotions in Pandora's box and you weren't who you wanted to be in the world, where did you start unpacking all of this? Like, how did it start for you?
It started with a very Black depression in law school. Mm-hmm. And that came out of, so when you fall in love, right, you have to pull out the love emotion. And as the story of Pandora's box goes, you can't just open the box and take one thing out and then close the box. Unfortunately. And so I was in law school, met my husband of almost 25 years now. We were in law school together at the same time. So I met him our first year of law school. The first day of law school, one of the professors, or Dean Suni now, gives what she called the vegetable speech, where she talks about, eat your vegetables, because law school is a lot of stress. And she talks about the fact that, how when you like fill up a water glass, like really, really full, the way the water interacts with the glass, it will dome over the top. She was like, law school domes your glass. So any other stress that comes in is going to overflow. Right. And so I met Jason, and he was and is amazing and wonderful and supportive. And I don't know what I did in my past lives to, like, after everything else, deserve somebody as amazing as he is. But I met Jason and was falling in love with Jason and tried to open the box.
It seemed like such a good idea at the time, didn't it?
Right. And in combination with law school and everything, came out. Now I had moved away. So we are from the city where I live now, but my family's house burned down when I was 10, and it was 10 degrees below zero that day. And my mom said we could buy a new sofa someplace warmer, and moved us to the Gulf of Mexico. And then my parents continued to live there until both of them passed away, but my grandmother was still in Kansas City. And after I graduated from undergraduate, I stupidly moved to Kansas City, to the third floor of my grandmother's house, because I still was like, even though I knew how they treated me was badly, they were so very manipulative and controlling. Like, I didn't know what else to do. Like, I didn't have faith in my own ability to take care of myself. So me moving away from home was just moving to her house, because I didn't have the faith, in that I could take care of myself. Right. Met Jason, started to fall in love with Jason, and had to open that Pandora's box to get the love out, and everything else just like came out. Yeah. and fell into really Black depression in law school. Thankfully, the university I went to had really tremendous because they also have medical school as part of the university. They have like this really tremendous mental health resources available for students, and saw a wonderful therapist through law school, and really did a much I did a much better job of managing my relationship with my family. I did choose to never walk away from them. Um, in retrospect, I don't know. I still don't know that that was the right choice.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe I should have walked away from them earlier, but my grandmother, I was the only family member here, and and it came down to, yes, I could have walked away and been like, nope, well, you've been a jerk. So you're just going to have to live, and take care of yourself and die alone. Sorry. But I was like, even though she was a terrible person, I was like, I'm not that person.
Yeah.
I'm not the person to walk away and leave her. And I think it was made easier because, reference back to the fact that I have an amazing husband who is very supportive. And even he was like, sometimes he was like, you should just, God, how do you put up with her? Like, she's so awful to you. But I think, I don't know. I don't know. I did. It just was my choice. Um, and I don't know. Like, honestly, I think uh, having someone in my life who was so supportive, Jason, um, but also over time, and I think because I had learned at such a young age that how they treated me was wrong, I started learning how to push back against their talk,
Mm.
and making choices for myself. So like one of the big ways that my grandmother was like super hyper controlling and manipulative was my singing. Like anything that I did that was not opera was a waste of my talent. She wanted me to go into opera. She wanted me to major in music. Um, I wanted to major in music, but I wanted to major in music theater. Give me the role of Ursula, give me the role of the Wicked Stepsister. I love being goofy and big and over the top. I did not want to sing arias. Weirdly, this is just an aside. Weirdly, I completely lost my high notes when I was pregnant with both of my children.
Oh, wow.
And
And you
so
went to
like I
law
want to
school instead of focusing on studying music.
right, because I stopped singing for a decade.
Wow.
I gave it up entirely because that was something she could control me with.
Mm.
So not necessarily something I would recommend. I'm like, I don't feel like I really did. I mean, I know I did a great job of both taking care of her and yet at the same time like protecting myself from a lot of her guff.
Mm.
Um, After she died, I did have a brief period of time of feeling guilty that I had wished her to death. And I was like, maybe if I had just walked away from her before and she hadn't relied on me, she would have hired somebody better to take care of her. Now, honestly, she was the direct result of her own demise because she would not wear her oxygen.
Mm.
And so
Mm.
she actually ultimately passed away from carbon dioxide poisoning because she wouldn't wear her oxygen. So she wasn't clearing the carbon dioxide out of her lungs. She had
And yet
nothing to do with me.
fascinating, I was going to say fascinating that you had a voice, even a small voice inside your head going, did I do this to her? Was this my fault?
Mm-hmm.
Which would
because
come
because
from your trauma.
everything's my fault.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
My
get
parent,
I
I
get
don't know
that.
how many times my mom said she and my stepdad were getting divorced and it was my fault.
Yeah. Yeah. And I
Oh,
think that that is
everything.
part of the abuse because my mom was an alcoholic, and I remember telling my dad one day that mum had a drinking problem. And his response to that, and I was like 12 or 13, his response to that was, well, what do you expect? You are a terrible child. And I have it so clear in my head. And I look back at that and I go, God, I had no chance. And my sister was, she was going through her own horrendous trauma, but back then she was just a bitch. So when I talked to my dad about it, it was the same response. He goes, yes, but you're a terrible sister. So that's why she's the way she is. You're the reason she is the way she is. And I look back at that like you and go, I had no chance of becoming someone with high self-esteem, a deep sense of love, a deep sense of care or nurturing, because it was never anywhere in my environment. And I'll go back to that one person in your life that took that moment was just a miracle. Like she saved you. This is from my experience and my perspective. She did save you from a deeper hell from what you could have gone through than what you did. And I want to send her some appreciation for having the courage to say
think
something.
about it now with all of the stuff with like youth protection and I'm like, I was like, how insanely brave was it? Like,
yeah.
I'm
but
just
that
like,
could have gone both ways nowadays too, because there's also this big thing around abuse in children now, that had she come out and said something, that maybe your parents could have gotten the support they needed to not be doing what they're doing, or she would have had support to have a conversation with your parents. So I guess it's a totally different time, but back then, it was such an unusual thing to do back then.
Yeah, this would have been 1985.
Yeah.
1985, 86.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was like emotional abuse was only like the tiniest little like feather on the wind at that point. I mean, they were still like, I remember my family saying, the whole sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. Like, and now they're like, emotional abuse is manifests physically in people's bodies. I mean, there's CPTSD, which was not like, PTSD was like, they were the PTSD that soldiers have was like only barely being recognized at that point. They certainly didn't recognize the sort of chronic post-traumatic stress that comes from chronic abuse.
But even that's
abuse.
only now being recognized, that not everybody in Australia, it's not a common thing. Nobody here does CPTSD work. There's one woman in Queensland I found, but when I was looking around for someone to support me when I first started going down that CPTSD journey, I had to go to the US to find people. And thank God for the pandemic, because it meant that all of a sudden, all of these people who had closed books that would only see clients in-house were all of a sudden available all around the world, that you could have a therapist in America or you could have a therapist in the UK that specialized in the area if you couldn't find it in your local area.
Yeah. I mean, there are many, many bad things, obviously, many, 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 many bad things that came from the pandemic.
Yes.
But yeah, many.
Yes. Many.
But there are,
not denying there are some bad things, but far out there are some good things for those of us that were really mentally screwed up.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, but even here, I only recall having heard about CPTSD in the last few years. Now, I was told I had PTSD, like that diagnosis actually came while I was in law school. But I don't know that they really differentiated until more recently. Like, I didn't learn of a differentiation between, because I always like still thought sometimes of like, well, my stepfather who saw war had PTSD, but I don't know that I've really, like, even though I had the diagnosis, I didn't really like feel like sometimes that it was appropriate because I didn't see war, but it's just that chronic grinding of your psyche over time does the same thing as a single, catastrophic or traumatic event.
Yeah. Here it's
now,
known
like,
as it's known as childhood PTSD or complex PTSD.
Yeah.
But mostly childhood, because it's just that constant abuse from your childhood.
Yeah, so you never you never learn how to fully regulate your emotions at the time that you should be learning to regulate your emotions. And then, I mean, in some ways, it's kind of like trying to learn a foreign language as an adult, right? It's so much easier to learn the language when you're young.
Yeah.
And those emotions are almost like languages that then you have to go back and learn. And I know even now, there's sometimes that I just get so mad about why am I still dealing with this crap? Yeah. When am I ever like, I'm always like, it's like I feel like I'm better every day. I'm stronger every day. And, but there's like, at this point, I'm sort of coming into the ownership and the understanding that it's, at least in this lifetime, it's always going to be there, like, right, in some degree. Like it's like you can keep dividing it by half, but it will, there's, you can still keep dividing things by half. Yeah.
But there's always going to be
It will
some
never.
part that you're going to have to love just a little bit more because it's just struggling a lot today.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I want to ask,
Um,
how have you, once you opened Pandora's box and the shitstorm came out, how now do you manage those days? So when you go into, you might have a couple of really good days and then you have a bad day. How do you manage the bad day? What are the things? Are you saying things to yourself to support yourself through the day? Like, what are you doing now to manage the shitstorms that come?
um, I really love to read a lot of personal development books. Uh, but the it's so I'm going to reference a book, but I don't know if you've heard of The Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod. I hate the title.
I just found out about Hal last week. I watched an interview
Did
with
you?
him and I went, oh my God.
The whole Miracle Morning is just like so cheesy self care. It's just so cheesy self care. But um, I have about, it was before the pandemic, so it's been at least three. Can you believe it's been 3 years? It's been at least 3 years. I don't know how I came across the book. I don't even remember anymore. Read the book. I was historically not a morning person. My parents raised racing greyhounds, and I was given a tremendously inappropriately large an adult-like responsibility from way too young an age in helping take care of the greyhound farm. So like, you know, like high schoolers, I don't know what it's like in Australia, but US high schoolers for the most part are grossly underslept because they have school start before their brains actually wake up. I had it even doubly so because most mornings I had to get up at 4 to take care of the greyhounds before I would go to school.
Wow.
And make straight A's and sing in the show choir and all the other stuff. Um, and I was never a morning person. And I don't think teenagers are morning people. Like by the natural chronobiology of their brains, they're not morning people. And so I was not a morning person. So I read the Miracle Morning and I'm like, well, this better be good if I'm going to get my butt out of bed 30 minutes earlier. And of course, as a parent, I'm still like, my not getting up early is I got up at 8, but I started getting up earlier and started just and it's, there's 6 things. It's silence, so meditation. It's called, he uses savers, SAVERS, to remember the 6 things. The silence, which is meditation, affirmations, visualization, exercise, reading, and then S is scribing for journaling.
Yeah.
All things that I had kind of done hit or miss off and on, except I don't think I'd ever really done affirmations or visualization. I was already a voracious reader. Um, that was always like, because that was a place you could escape when you were growing up in an emotionally abusive household. Is a generally reading was not frowned on, right? Like most parents are like, oh yes, please read more, that's good for you. And it was always an escape, like no matter what your circumstances were, you could escape into somebody else's world in the pages of the book. And so I started dragging my hiney out of bed 15 minutes earlier and doing like just a little bit of each one. And so for the last, I'm going to say it's almost 4 years at this point, pretty consistently, at least 6 days a week. I sometimes sleep late on Saturday and do quite as much on a Saturday morning. I get up and do those things. And I know there's times, like for a long time, I felt like, oh, I don't know how much this is actually helping or how much of a difference this is making. But actually, at the moment, you just asked me that. I was like, I think that's one of the things that's made the biggest difference.
Yeah.
Is like if I like, it doesn't keep me from necessarily having a bad day that day, but like if I'm having a bad day, even if it's not the morning, I'll go pull out my affirmation cards and I'll read through them. Or I'll stop and do meditation, or I'll go take myself outside, assuming it's not cold because I'm a freezy bug, and get some sun and walk around the block. Even if it's just a quick little, 10 minutes out in the sun, getting some exercise. And I think having those things, I don't do the journaling as much as I should. And I think that's partly because I did used to journal a lot when I was a teenager and having all of the like stress with my family and the grandmother like stole my journal and then used the contents thereof against me for
Oh,
years to
my mum
come.
did that too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and you just answered my
Yay.
question because I don't like journaling either, and I never understood why until this very moment of, oh my God, my mum stole my diary and like she read it. Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks for answering that.
Yeah. So my journal, so what I do for journaling instead, because I still have sort of some of that, like, oh, I don't want to write my innermost thoughts, is what I do for my journaling is I do gratitude journaling.
Okay.
So like, yeah, I'll say, 3 things I'm grateful for. So that's the journaling part. But I also think there's just the making myself every day. And I challenge myself not to say the same thing all the time. Like I can't say I'm grateful for my family and my house. And, like I have to say I am grateful for X because of Y, and I challenge myself to pick something different. I mean, some days it may be like I'm grateful for my central heating because it's really cold outside today, and I am warm
Mm-hmm.
inside my house.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Or it may be like, I'm grateful for the new foster kittens we have because they're really adorable and they make me laugh. Or I am grateful for the sun today because I've been in a bad mood and the sun always makes me happier. I do not like seasonal affective disorder is like kicks my hiney. And I think
Yeah.
you tend to, I don't know, personally, I think a lot of other people I know that struggle with having like past emotional trauma, like gray days are just not good for your brain.
Yeah. So then I want to
And so for
ask,
the journaling part, yeah.
sorry to interrupt. I wanted to
Oh,
ask,
you're fine.
um, did you, because I'm kind of at the point where you were 4 years ago, where I'm looking around and know that I need to do something. And I found the Miracle Morning, and there's so much other stuff. There's Mel Robbins technique. Like there's so many tools and techniques. But where I'm stuck, and share with me if you went through this, is actually doing it. Like actually, and not only doing it, but doing it consistently. And not only doing it consistently, but doing it more than 3 or 4 days and then stopping. So did you go through any of this when you first started? When you first made the decision to go, okay, I need to get my shit into gear. I need to move. I need to shift where I am. I'm going to start doing this technique. Did you have anything that really pushed against you, or was it really easy for you to embrace and do every day?
Um, One of the things that pushed me against me was the getting up, right? But one of the things I think that helped me just do it. I wish Nike hadn't stolen that phrase because it's so good. Um, is in the book he talks about like even if you don't have time, because I was the whole slowing down thing, like this is new. This isn't like the last year. I've been really working on slowing down. I am not a slow down kind of person. Um, is do it for 6 minutes, like literally 1 minute each thing, but still do it. And so even on days that I didn't wanna, or I got up late, I would make myself at least do 2 or 3 of the things. Like I had to at least do more than read, because I read every day. So that was cheating. I told myself it was cheating if that was the only one I did. I had to do at least one other every day, whether it was exercise, take a walk, or even just do a few jumping jacks, or sit in silent meditation for just a minute. I had to do at least one of them every day. And the book, I don't know if it's in the book or if it's just on his website. There's like a 30-day challenge to do it every day for 30 days.
Mhm.
At least, and like I said, just so kind of what I did is like I just had to do a little. I made a promise to myself I would just do at least 5 minutes. Like,
And
so
you
I didn't even
never
have to do,
broke that promise? So you never
not
had
for
a
the
time where
first
you
30
didn't do it?
days.
Okay.
No, because I just make myself do at least one thing, even if it was just writing down the three things that I was grateful for. Because I always read, so like I said, I wouldn't count the reading because that
Mhm.
was cheating. Because I read every day. I read over 100 books a year. Like I just read all the time.
Mhm.
So that was cheating to count reading. That's what so I kind of like talked myself through this before I started. I was like, reading doesn't count. I have to do at least something every day, even if it's writing down three things I'm grateful for, even if it's just 1 minute of meditation. Um, like just set a timer, 1 minute. I just made myself do at least a little bit every day. Some mornings I would get up and I would do like 30 minutes or an hour. Um, a lot of mornings I begin like, I don't want to do any of it. I just want to lay in bed. I'm like, nope, but I have to do at least something. The writing three things to be grateful for, I found was the easiest one if I just like didn't have it in me.
Yeah.
Um, honestly, I think that's one of the most powerful of them.
And you could
Because
do that
I
still
think,
lying in bed too.
oh yeah, because you don't have to write it down. You could just think of three things you're grateful for.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, and I definitely believe in the power of that. You I don't know that it's so much attract to you like a law of attraction thing, but I definitely think that you notice what you pay attention to.
Mhm.
It's like when you get a new car, like you go buy a Toyota Camry, right? And you've never noticed them before because you didn't own a Toyota Camry, right? But as soon as you own a Toyota Camry, they're like everywhere. Like, where did they all come from? Well, they've been there all along. You just didn't notice them because you weren't paying attention to them. And so I do strongly believe that the things you pay attention to, you get more of. I don't know that it's necessarily a law of attraction thing, but that you
Mhm.
see them more because you're paying attention to them more.
Yeah.
And I would say of the Miracle Morning, I think just the journaling, and he doesn't talk about journaling in the context of gratitude. I don't know where, I mean, there's so many different sources that talk to you about using, doing gratitude journaling. Early on, like that's what I decided that's what my journaling was going to be. Because I tried like what's her name? Julia Cameron, the Artist's Way. She has like the 3 pages of morning pages, like the free writing. I'm like, I'm not writing for 3 pages every morning. I did that in law school. My
I
hand
don't have
would fall
time for
off.
that shit.
Like, I don't have time for it. I don't like, ow, like I already have tendonitis and arthritis in both my thumbs. I don't need to add to it.
Yeah. Yep.
and um and so before I even started the Miracle Morning, I like got the gratitude journaling, and so that's what I've always done is that. And I would say of all of the things, that's been the most beneficial. But
Mhm.
even like some days I'm like, oh, I don't want to do the affirmations, but I'll like I write mine on 3x5 cards, and so I'll just like flip through the 3x5 cards and read them, and it helps. But the gratitude journaling, like I said, I made myself do it every day. And I think because like even if like some of the days that it was hard, it was I'm thankful for my family and I'm thankful for my, like, even if it was on the harder days and I just resorted to the easy things for me to thankful for, it still made me focus on the things I was thankful for.
Yeah. And
And
do you
it's
think
hard to
that
focus.
helped do you think that commitment, like I imagine that commitment, which I'm lacking at the moment, which I'm working on, doing that every day would have helped that part that inside of you that was feeling worthless, that did have that low self-esteem, that did feel like you couldn't achieve, that did feel like you couldn't succeed. Just achieving that 30 days it would have done something to change that, just to alter that voice just a little bit.
Oh, yeah. I mean, definitely. And I think also because ultimately it's a commitment to loving yourself to do it.
Yeah.
And it's really, 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 as you know, hard
Yeah,
to
I
love yourself.
do. Hence this podcast. I think it is like called the quest to save myself from the darkness, because I haven't got a fucking clue how to get out of it. Because it's hard. It's such a hard place to get out of when you've been, and I now, like, I was calling it programmed, but now I'm kind of calling it groomed. It's like I was groomed to be and live in the darkness by a parent who was a very strong victim. And it's hard. It's really hard to get out on your own when you're on your little island and there's no one around. It's not like I'm surrounded by amazing, loving friends. Having a supportive partner, what a gift. It makes such a difference to just have one person in your life that has a pom-pom in their hand and that's cheering you on. Because when you don't have that and it's just you by yourself and your island, and you don't have that cheering voice in your head, all you have is the darkness.
Yeah. Well, and it's so funny because Jason always is saying that I saved his life. That he thinks that he was so bad at making, like, he didn't, because I make him take care of himself, right? Like he was like he was terrible at taking care of himself. He's like, I don't think I would be alive at 50 if you weren't making me take care of myself all of these years. And I'm like, ditto. But I think the thing with the miracle morning and the making myself do that every day is that it was loving myself. Like, and it was being selfish. And I think that's one thing, and I'm sure you can attest to this too. It's really, really hard. Like my family, they literally told me that at no point should I ever put myself in front of someone else.
Yeah.
That, like, the words came out of their mouths, like they didn't just imply it. And so the whole, like, making this choice that I am going to take this time for myself every morning, even if it's only 5 minutes, and I am going to prioritize myself in this time. That, I think that was one of the bigger things, because even with as loving and supportive as my husband is, I didn't do that. I did not. I would take care of other people before I would take care of myself. I was the epitome, and probably still am in some ways, of putting somebody else's oxygen mask on before my own. For example, in the last couple of years, I was recommended to do EMDR, which is the eye movement desensitization thing. I still haven't done it, but my son, who struggles with anxiety disorder, has. Because it was recommended to me, and I was like, hey, I wonder if that would help Jasper.
Yeah, I hear you. I do exactly the same thing. And in our house, so I think I mentioned I've got dogs and cats, but we've also got chickens and geese and guinea fowl. And every day I prepare this food for the chickens and the geese and the guinea fowl, because we've got baby chickens, we've got adult chickens and baby geese and adult geese, and they all need different types of food. So I prepare, and I get out all the nuts and the seeds, and I blend everything, because I have to be really strict against gluten. So I have to make everything myself. And I make this amazing thing that's all filled with organic food and spirulina, and it looks amazing. And then I'll come inside and eat, I don't know, I'll have like an apple or a banana, and like I'm so bad that even our poultry and our dogs and our cats eat better than what I do. I completely understand, because that pushing against that part where you've been raised that if you do anything for yourself, if you sit down and watch something, or if you sit down and read a book, or if you go outside, like me, go outside and climb a tree, or go outside and have fun, anything was deemed selfish. But if you're not washing the dishes and you're not mowing the lawn and you're not cleaning your bedroom and you're not doing your schoolwork and you're not practicing your clarinet and you're not doing this, then you are being selfish. And it's that grooming into realizing, well, shit, is there nothing that I'm allowed to do for me? And it gets to this point when you've had that for long enough, where even if I could go out and climb a tree, and I did, I would always be called in to do some kind of chore. But it's just that even if they didn't say you are being selfish, it's this implied belief that just starts to, it just takes over your brain. And you don't realize it until the program is well and truly set. And then we're in our 40s and we go and we try to sit down and like I remember I started trying to go outside and make myself a juice in the morning and sit outside and look over the property because we're on a big block of land. And I think I did it for about 5 days. And then this part of me, I just felt so uncomfortable going, no, I need to be inside. I need to be washing the dishes. I need to be cleaning the floor. I need to be cleaning something. I need to be making a house look nice. I can't sit down here and drink a juice. The house is a mess. And so it's pushing against that. Yes.
Yeah.
It's that concept. And that's where you said right back in the beginning that you're a procrastinator, or you're a procrastinator, but you're so busy. And I was thinking, gosh, I wonder if she spends a lot of time cleaning. I feel like I've got a bug crawling on me, or it's my hair. I live on land in a really big shed. It's usually a bug. But back at the beginning when you said I procrastinate all the time, but and people say, but you're always so busy. And I went, yeah, I bet you she's cleaning, she's cooking, she's driving someone somewhere, she's doing something for someone. Like you're always busy, but you never actually focus on doing something that you want to do that's going to benefit you, that's going to increase your business, that's going to add to your life. And so you procrastinate on everything that's for you, but you're so busy and you don't have time. And then that's the validation of, but I don't have time to do anything for me because I'm so busy all the time. Does that kind of sit? Like, do you have that same voice in your head?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, and I will say, like, I'm better now than I've ever been, but I still don't sit still well. Yeah. Like if I'm sitting still, I'm generally crocheting, and everything I crochet, I donate to charity.
Maybe next time
I crochet instead of knits because knitting needles are too noisy. And so if but I can crochet anywhere, even because it's silent.
Oh my God, that's so funny. I have to say, actually, when I go out, it's really interesting. When I go out, I don't laugh when I'm around friends and that, because usually I have this really loud, like when I'm laughing, I'm really laughing, or when I'm sneezing, I'm really sneezing. When I sneeze here on our property, it's hilarious. It just echoes through the whole forest over to the next door neighbors, and I can hear it echoing because I'm so loud. But here it's like, well, it doesn't matter. I'm on 140 acres. Nobody cares. But then when I'm out at friends' places, I'm not laughing loud. It's like, oh, like it's everything gets kind of shoved in just so I don't inconvenience somebody or make somebody not like me because I've laughed the wrong way, or I've laughed loudly so they don't want to be around me anymore. It's insane how that emotional abuse, it just gets into, and it affects every single part of your life.
Yeah. Yes. I would say one of the things that I think has helped me in being able to, I guess, like sort of live out loud a little more. And you're going to be like, what? Is live action role play.
Ooh.
Otherwise known as LARPing. Now, of course, I actually have returned to theater and singing now that all of my tormentors have passed away.
Mm-hmm.
And I love it.
Yep.
But live action role play is remarkably therapeutic if you find the right group, because there are some groups that are super toxic. but because you create a character and then you go embody that character like live. Like it's like Dungeons and Dragons, except you are the character
Mm-hmm.
and you go interact with other people who are the character. And it's so therapeutic because you can work out a lot of real life stuff in
Mm.
this like make believe world.
Mm. Mm.
And I think, and I've, I don't know. I had never thought about it until you said something about like being afraid to like laugh out loud or be too loud. And, and I was like, where did that shift for me come from? And when did it come? And that's when I kind of feel like it did is when I started doing LARP. And that's
Right.
been 7 or 8 years. And I don't even actually, I'm still actually a director for the LARP because I don't take care of myself well,
Mm-hmm.
I volunteered as a director for the LARP group I was in because if I was
She did.
beholden to, because of course, because if I was beholden to other people, I would make myself get there.
The things we do.
Yeah. So yeah. I didn't even said that out loud. I was like, I'm going to volunteer I volunteered first as what's called a logistician, but I even said, I was like, to make myself go because I would like come up to the date of going to do something to go to one of the events. And I'd be like, oh no, I can't go because I have to do this or I have to do the other, or this person's counting on me to do this, that, or the other. I actually volunteered to make myself accountable to the game. So I would go to the game and not keep going, no, I'm not going to go. Now, and, yeah, kind of, I suppose, in a roundabout way, that was self care to make myself go. But yeah.
Wow. Oh my
But
God, that's so funny.
you totally understand that. Like I can explain that to
I really do.
like I can explain that to a normal person, and they'd be like, "What is wrong with you?"
No,
And you're like, "Oh yeah, that makes sense to me."
yeah, I completely understand. I am allowed in my brain, I'm allowed to do this podcast because anything that is talked about and shared has the potential to help somebody else. And so that's the justification to allow me to do it. And if I didn't have that, I don't know if I would have been able to actually create it and do it. And even in the beginning, when I said to you, I'm doing this because I want to have conversations with people that are further ahead than me, because I'm dealing with so much and I don't know how to get myself out of where I am. There's that part that comes up and goes, yeah, you can't do that with that reason, because it's too selfish. You cannot say that is why you're doing this, because people are going to look at you and go, oh my God, what a selfish cow. And so I have to,
I think it's amazing. I mean, to me, that shows like how, I mean, to me, that shows that you're not that far behind me. Like that you I think it's be selfish.
yeah.
I mean, is it going to help other people? Yes. But is it okay if it just helps you? Yes. Yes. It's okay if it just helps you.
Can I take a minute
Because
to just like have that part of me that's putting a hand up going, no, don't look at me.
because because you are worth it helping you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for saying that. I'm just going to let that sink in for a minute. Which is
I wish I
really
could hug you, but
uncomfortable.
it's really, really far away.
It's so far away. You're on the other side of the world. I have to say, I wish I was doing this in the US, because I think I would do things in person now that the pandemic is gone. I would do this in person. I think it would be just different. It would be different doing it in person.
I actually I'm starting business number 5 because I'm insane. that is and it stems out of like all of this, a women's empowerment retreat series. And we'll be doing things like breath work and mindfulness meditation and other like self-confidence things. And basically, if it's going to lift a woman up, we're going to work it into one of the retreats.
Wow.
And it stems out of this, like, I want to be able to lift other people up, and not again because I'm up on the hillside looking down in the valley, because I'm in the valley with them.
Yeah.
I may be a few yards ahead, but
and you know that if you lift them up, they're probably going to turn around and lift you up.
Mm-hmm. Rising tide lifts all ships.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Now, I am aware that it's probably getting late for you. And your lovely husband is probably sitting there wondering, what is she doing in that room?
Well, and I know I just heard my daughter come home from Scouts, so her computer's right over there. She's going to be antsy here in a minute about when is mom going to be done so I can get on my computer and talk to my friends. Oh my gosh, I will say one thing. I was like,
please,
my daughter is just like, I don't know what I did, at least that right. She is just so amazing and strong, and she's got her own voice, and she didn't take any guff off of anybody, and she is so confident. And I'm like, watch out, world.
Wow. Wow. That's something to be proud of. Yeah.
Yeah, she's pretty awesome. And my son is awesome too. And it's like such a struggle because his anxiety lies to him, but he is like so kind and so caring, and he is like understands what that like he moves through the world with privilege as a white man, and he tries to use his privilege to center other people whose voices need to be centered. And I wish he could see what I see, but I'm like, I don't know what I did, but I lucked out because both of them are amazing human beings, and I'm like couldn't be prouder than both of them. And I feel like I at least kept the promise of that the crap from my family ended with me.
Yeah, I hear you on that. I'm actually exactly the same, and thank you for sharing, because I say that I frequently, it's a terrible thing to say, but out of my mouth frequently comes, my daughter is an incredible kid in spite of me being her parent. And she's just so damn kind. She's so nice, and she's so thoughtful, and she's so patient. And the other thing I often say when people go, oh, how is Bailey? And I go, she's amazing. She is so patient with me. And obviously, because I'm not a banshee screamer, but I have meltdowns. I have moments. I struggle. I go into my victim. I go into my poor me. I go into my nobody likes me. I go every now and then. I've had this since I was a kid. The nobody likes me, everybody hates me, I think I'll go eat worms. Like, that is just this thing that I have had in my head for 40 odd years. And I look at her and I think, I don't know how you are the way you are, but I am so thankful that you are the way you are, even though I am me. But I think that it's part of having this awareness. Like, you have a lot of awareness, I have a lot of awareness. Part of having this awareness is being able to, for me, it's counteracting the damage that I do. So I know I'm going to damage her. There's no way I can't, because I came from such a damaged environment. But what I do to counteract that is I am giving her the tools along the way, and I'm teaching her about the voice in the head. I'm teaching her about how that, and we talk about the mean voice and the angel voice, and how the angel voice is that really kind voice that always tells the truth, that is always guiding her into a really beautiful way. But then we talk about the mean voice, and how that mean voice is the voice that is always lying to her. It never tells the truth, and its sole purpose on this planet is to make her feel like shit. And we differentiate between the two. And so when she has that mean voice come up, she looks and she goes, I've got that mean voice come up, Mom. And I go, okay, so what can you do about it? And she goes, well, I know it's not true, and I know it's lying. So she's learning to create that separation. At 8, she's learning that she is not that voice, that voice is not her. It's just there to mess with her head. And she can make the choice whether to follow it and listen to it, or whether to turn around and go, what does the angel voice say to me? And now she go, what's the angel voice saying? And of course, the angel voice is saying, you're amazing, you're kind, you're thoughtful, you're generous, you're lovely, you're beautiful, you're all of these things. And I think that's the best thing that we can do as parents who have come from really, really screwed up past, is to realize we are going to mess up our kids, but at least we're in a position to teach them how to deal with what they're going to end up having to deal with.
Mm.
And maybe that's what you've done.
Even healthy. Something worked out all right. That is definitely a blessing I count every day.
Yeah.
As I go back to my gratitude journal, I try not to just every day say, I'm so thankful for my family, even though I could literally write that every day. Try to stretch myself.
Oh,
And
I feel like
I'm grateful for meeting you. Like I said, I was kind of, well, because it was something I was doing for me. So I was going to put it off,
No, I do. I know, because Bailey's sick at the moment, and she's got a cold. And so, of course, yesterday I'm like, oh, I should put it off. She's sick and she's probably going to need me. It's going to be really hard for her not to come out. And what if she needs me? And then I had this other voice go, oh, yeah, you know what? She's going to be okay. She's not going to fall off the face of the earth because you take an hour to have a conversation that you want to have with another human being. It's okay. So yes, I understand. I have enjoyed this. Thank you so much. Wow, this was my first episode of this show, and I'm so thankful to HeatherAnne for being willing to have such an honest conversation with me, and for sharing her truth with me, and for sharing her life and her journey. It helped me. If it helped you, feel free to write in the comments below how it helped you. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and share and subscribe. As I said at the start of the show, we all know that it helps. So please do help. And if you would like to financially support this channel, there is a Patreon link and a PayPal link in the description below. So please do that if you would like to. And finally, if you would like mentoring or coaching from me, you can go to lovecreatesfreedom.com. And I will hopefully have you on board. It's free mentoring. It directly links to a YouTube group. No, it directly links to a Facebook group where you can join in the conversation. It's a very small group at the moment, so get in now while you can, while it's small, because then you'll get the most mentoring possible from me. And if you would like to follow HeatherAnne, I will put her links in the description below. Oh my gosh, my mouth is just not working. I will put her links in the description below for you to follow her as well. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much for watching this episode. You are greatly appreciated. Mwah.